Well, our big focus is India's second wave of coronavirus. Now, India saw the biggest daily surge in COVID cases since early October, with 72,330 fresh infections being reported since yesterday. And today's surge is the highest that we've seen since October 11th, when 74,383 infections were reported. And of course, Maharashtra remains the state reporting the maximum number of cases. Now, today is also a day that India has entered the third phase of the world's largest inoculation drive, as vaccine net has extended to people who are 45 years and older. By vaccinating more people, the centre aims to give a boost to COVID fight amid emergence of this second wave in some parts of the country. Well, to talk more about this resurgence of coronavirus that we're seeing in the country, we're now joined by one of the country's top epidemiologists, Dr. Jay Prakash Mulyal. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on the show again. First and foremost, was this second wave of infections inevitable, and were we being foolhardy earlier this year when, we seem to be in a very self-congratulatory mood over the low numbers?
Well, when the number of new cases started falling in September, I was a little nervous about it because that was not expected to fall that fast, because the sero survey did not show the expected prevalence of, herd immunity. However, it was gratifying to note there was a fall. Now we realize that there has been considerable heterogeneity in the way infection spread in the community. Even within the same city, some parts of the city had high rate of infection earlier, but many parts, they were careful, following strict norms against corona and making sure they didn't encounter the infection. So when you have such a large population who are susceptible, this sort of thing is inevitable. Same thing happened in Europe. Now, that is something that you get nervous about, but remember, as long as infections are on previously uninfected population, technically there's nothing to worry about.
All right, so you're saying technically nothing to worry about, but what is the role of the mutated variants in this particular surge? We do know that we have the Kent variant, that's the one that was identified in the UK, the one in South Africa. There's also a double mutated virus, we're told, that has been found in some samples in Maharashtra. The government so far says they don't have a role to play in this surge.
Exactly. That's what I alluded to, saying that technically nothing to worry about. It is theoretically possible that a new variant will emerge which ignores the immunity the people of India have acquired through natural infection, which is almost half the population. Now, if that has to happen, again, is going to be a same old rigmarole. But to date, we have no evidence that is happening. In fact, emerging evidence from the laboratories show that the first infection would guard against most of the potential variants without any problem. So I think we can relax about the new variant business, but we should understand that the protocol we need to follow to reduce it the same as what we did in the earlier period. Not that we did it very well, because there are differences depending on the type of people, the socioeconomic class. You can afford to or not afford to be strictly following the norm. You have to go to work every day. But this particular subset of the population, who's getting infected now, were careful earlier, and now they sort of relax, thinking the danger is over.
Right, so are we doing enough, genomic analysis of the test to know exactly what the extent of these variants are in the population? Because we do know from what we saw, in the UK, how the Kent variant spread quite rapidly. So do you feel we know enough about, the extent of variants, how far it spread in the population?
We know one thing about these viruses. They vary recklessly. In fact, that is part of the life itself. The biological variability. Today, the whole glorious forms of life you see is a function of these variations. You can't stop it, and you can't worry about it. There's no point worrying about it. If something emerges, we ask the question, will this variant listen to the earlier immunity, and generally they do. Will it cause any serious harm to people when they get infected? If they don't, nothing to worry. A slightly faster infection rate may not be a big issue. But what I mean to say, this variability is there all the time. In fact, this is the first time we are carefully measuring these, not all of us, in UK especially, they keep measuring it all the time. Right. And so we are first time getting used to this business.
Right. So what about these reports, right now that a lot of younger people seem to be getting the coronavirus more in this particular wave? I know it's all like anecdotal reports and young people are being perhaps more careless right now. But is there some sense that, they're getting affected more right now?
Well, the word affected, if you are talking about infection, yes, there is no difference. Earlier also, the rate of infection among young people were exactly equal to middle-aged people and was equal to elderly people. And we were sad about it because we want less number of elderly to get infected. Okay? Now the question you work it other way around. Are the young people facing more serious illness? That I don't think has been shown to be true.
And sir, while we vaccinated a huge number of people, if you take the whole number at over 6.4 crore people have been vaccinated, that's the population of some European countries. But there's also a sense that the vaccine drive isn't moving fast enough, that we have to think out of the box. And how, in your view, how can we speed this up?
Well, two answers to your question. Number one, that 6.5 crores is only about less than 5% of the population. But don't fret. People who have been infected naturally, a large number has been one of the biggest, number of people infected, highest in the world is India. About 50 crores almost have been infected. So given that background, we need to have a little additional vaccination to get the tantalizing level of herd immunity. And the numbers will start falling.
And, some have even suggested if we can do door-to-door vaccine drives. Mumbai, the BMC has asked about this. But then there are others who have pointed out that this is a bit foolhardy. Should there be any sort of untoward incident, it'll damage the vaccine drive even more, given that we're already seeing, so much vaccine hesitancy among the people.
Yeah, I think you should look at the picture very carefully. There is nothing that we to do in a frantic mode. There is no need for panic. Remember, control of the virus is eminently possible if people sort of follow norms. Elderly people should be careful for a little more time. They get vaccinated as quickly as possible, and in a short time, that will come down. So I don't think that we need to do all this drama. It is actually counterproductive because things go wrong. Every time you give target and say finish these people, then there is always a tendency to be kind of rough about it. The thing is, vaccination is done by people for their protection, and they should voluntarily come for it because the vaccine is safe and it protects. And actually, the behavior is changing quite a lot. Earlier, there was some anxiety. Now, more and more people are coming for vaccination. I don't like the idea of this kind of a shandy approach to vaccination.
Right, sir. Do you think there's been mixed messaging by the government over, this issue of COVID, given that on the one hand you have the health ministry, you have doctors, central doctors all talking about how we need to follow COVID protocols. But on the other hand, you have elections taking place in these states. You have these massive rallies being shown. You have the Kumbh Mela that's begun today in Haridwar. Again, thousands and lakhs of people are going to gather there.
I know. Do you need me to comment on it? I think it is not safe for elderly to take part in these crowded areas. That is simple enough. Everybody knows it. But it's people's choice, And when it comes to worship, it is sensitive. So I would at least request people who are in this kind of a busy places, crowded places, wear your mask. That will protect you. Mask been shown to be very effective in preventing transmission.
All right, well, a diplomatic answer there, but yes, telling people to be careful. And finally, sir, what about, this controversy over AstraZeneca? Again, Germany, they've stopped it for those under 60, 65. Canada as well has put some restrictions. What is your view on that?
Well, there are two questions as to effectiveness and safety. We know from now on that there have been confusion about how elderly people react to this vaccination in Europe. Not so much in India, surprisingly. And this business of, thromboembolic phenomena or things like that, we don't have a general tendency to fall prey for such problems. So for India, absolutely no problem. Both the vaccines are quite safe and quite effective. And I think we will stop at that. These controversies have other implications which we don't know much about. So I think we'll carefully watch. As far as I'm concerned, both the vaccines seem to be doing quite well in India, quite safe, quite effective.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Jayaprakash, for joining us here on NDTV.
You're most welcome.
Well, speaking of Germany, let's focus on Germany now, which is in the grip of the third wave of the pandemic, and case numbers there are rising steadily as the country fails to get new, more aggressive variants under control. Debates over how to handle this situation may now lead to a political showdown in the country. For more on this, we're joined by DW correspondent Nicole Froelich, who joins us from Berlin. Thanks so much, Nicole, for joining us. Now, German Chancellor Angela Merkel has threatened to centralize the country's COVID response, overriding state leaders on matters of disease control. Why is this?
Well, the situation here is quite extraordinary at the moment, actually, with Germany being a federal republic. Implementing disease control measures is largely up to state leaders. They agreed with the central government that a relaxation of restrictions would be allowed only as long as the case number in each region stayed below a certain threshold. In case of surpassing it, it was agreed that the region in question would automatically go back into lockdown. Now, with cases on the rise again, this critical point has been crossed in a number of states, but not all state premiers are following the agreed plan. And that has angered Chancellor Angela Merkel, who is pushing for a more radical approach to fighting this very aggressive third wave. So much so that she recently announced she's not going to sit idly by while pandemic control isn't taken seriously everywhere in the country. Now, currently, she doesn't have the power to overrule state leaders on this matter, but she did hint at amending Germany's pandemic law in order to regain control. This would, of course, amount to a significant power grab, very unlike her, and would certainly also cause a lot of controversy, but she's not standing for re-election later this year, so she might just do whatever it takes to bring everybody in line.
Now, there's been a very slow rollout of the vaccines, not only in Germany, but around the entire EU. What's being done to speed it up?
You're exactly right. Frustration in the EU is growing each day. Now, efforts in Germany have taken another blow, with the country's vaccination agency deciding that the AstraZeneca jab not be provided to people under the age of 60 after mounting evidence of blood clots, especially in younger women. In the 4 months since the EU's inoculation drive began, less than 13% of the population has received a first shot. Leading the way here is Hungary, and there is a very simple reason for that. They are using Russian and Chinese serums that have not yet been recommended by the European Medicines Agency. So quantitatively, they are ahead, but it remains to be seen at what cost, really, since the data on the safety and efficacy of the vaccines they are using on their population has not been independently verified. A jab that has been approved in the EU is the one developed by the US pharmaceutical giant Johnson & Johnson. Brussels has so far ordered 200 million doses of that single-shot vaccine, the first of which will reportedly arrive on April 19th. So here the European Union, with its 450 million citizens, really hopes to give its vaccination drive a significant boost. But officials are also in talks with other players of the pharmaceutical industry to see where production infrastructure can be improved and the rollout sped up by, for example, relaxing storage conditions or greenlighting new manufacturing sites in the bloc. In any case, vaccine export bans, because we have to bear in mind that millions of doses are produced in the EU and sold and administered abroad, are still an option that is very much on the table. But this kind of vaccine nationalism could have very serious consequences, and the EU isn't going to haphazardly jeopardize international alliances over this.
Well, the EU is now in the middle of the Easter holiday, so what measures are being taken to ensure that, vacations don't turn into super spreader events?
Non-essential travel is still very much discouraged around the EU, and entry from non-Schengen nations is actually banned in most countries. But within the EU, the situation is somewhat bizarre, to be honest. Germans, for example, can't vacation in Germany because lodging for holiday purposes isn't allowed. They can, however, travel abroad, to Spain, for example, where the situation is similarly outlandish. People can enter the country to vacation, but Spaniards themselves can cross from one region to the other for leisure purposes. So there is a bit of bewilderment about this, as you might imagine. Countries that are expecting considerable movements over the Easter holidays have largely imposed negative test requirements for entry. Some have had them in place for quite some time, like Spain. Germany triggered measures quite short notice, which sent some destinations like the Balearic island of Mallorca scrambling to up testing capacities. Italy, another European tourism hotspot, will impose a mandatory 5-day quarantine for people arriving or returning and testing at the end. So there is no unified EU strategy, really. People are urged to use local contact tracing apps and to practice social distancing wherever they go. To make all of this easier in the summer, the main holiday season here in Europe, the EU is looking at launching a green pass in June, aimed at facilitating travel for those who have been vaccinated or already recovered from an infection. But this plan, too, is not without controversy. Critics say that this kind of passport would discriminate those who haven't been able yet or maybe don't want to get vaccinated.
All right, that is a big debate. Thank you so much for joining us there, Nicole. Well, with that, time for us to slip into a short break. On the other side, we'll take a look at all the COVID numbers coming in. Welcome back. Well, let's now take a look at the latest COVID numbers. And today, India has reported 72,330 daily cases of coronavirus. That's the highest that we've reported since early October, since the 11th. And just look at how the cases have been going up. 26th March, we had 59,000. Then it went up to 60,000. 30th and 31st March, around the festive season, perhaps not too many people going in for the testing. But now, 72,330 cases being reported in 24 hours. And this is the deaths over the last 24 hours. 459 deaths being reported in this 24-hour period. On the 26th of March, we reported 257. So you can see how it has been going up steadily there, with 459 deaths being reported during this 24-hour period. Let's take a look at the vaccination so far today. An important day. The vaccinations have opened up for everyone over 45 years of age. So far, a first dose has been given to 33 crore people, and a second dose has been given to 86,869 people. Over 6.43 crore people have been vaccinated in the country so far. That is, the number of vaccines that we've done so far, but it's a very small percentage of the entire population. And if we take a look at people between the ages of 45 to 60, the first dose it has been administered to 76.74 lakh, while a second dose has been administered to 13,571 so far. This was the second phase of the vaccinations when it opened up for them. Let's take a look now. It's been said in this second wave of coronavirus that a lot of younger people are getting affected. Now, this could be because younger people are being more careless. They're out and about a lot more. But take a look here in Delhi in November, we had 5.58% of the population between ages of 1 to 17 affected. Now in March, it's 6.66%. If we take a look at those between the ages of 18 to 30, now that's interesting. 21.79% were infected earlier, while now it's gone up to 27.81%. And if we look at the age group between 61 to 70, it was 11% earlier. It's gone down to 9.36%. And finally, the Punjab government has said that younger people are most affected, so they are the ones who should receive the vaccines, and the vaccination drive should open up for people who are younger. As we said, today is an important day with vaccines opening up for those who are over 45 years of age, and several politicians, leaders and celebrities have gone ahead to get their vaccination. There you can see Union Minister Piyush Goyal, Jyotiraditya Scindia to author Chetan Bhagat all going ahead and getting their vaccination, even Chief Minister Jagan Mohan Reddy there.